When I last drove the Honda Pilot in early 2015, I called it one of the best three-row SUVs on the market. But 2015 was an eternity ago. Back then, General Motors still sold vehicles in Europe. We thought 707 horsepower was surely the most Dodge would ever stuff in the Challenger, and the Tesla Model 3 was still just a rumor. Obviously, a lot can change in 3 years. But Honda is making some changes of its own for the 2019 model year with a revised version of its Pilot. And today, we're going to see if this updated Pilot is still one of the best in the biz. So what's new for 2019? Well, if I'm being honest, not much. But the changes Honda made were in the right places. First, let's get the subjective stuff out of the way. Honda's made some styling changes for the 2019 model year, but really, you'd have to be the president of your local Pilots Owners Club to spot the changes. But luckily, you have me to point them out for you. For the 2019 model year, Honda wanted to make the Pilot look tougher, so they added this angrier looking front bumper with these exposed cheekbones. And this thing here in the middle, that's not a skid plate, but what Honda calls a skid garnish. I guess it's the off-road equivalent of parsley. To really change the look of the Pilot's front end. Around back, it's largely the same story, except for this lower bumper piece here. At the front of the Pilot, Honda just introduced us to the skid garnish, but already at the back of the Pilot, they've created a new name for their fake skid plate. This isn't a skid garnish, but rather a skid-type design. I guess I'm gonna have to get somebody at Honda to explain the difference to me. A more useful feature at the back of the new Pilot is a new hands-free tailgate that you can open with the swipe of a foot. Unfortunately, this feature is only available on touring and above models, so you're gonna have to spend some money to get it. Inside the 2019 Pilot, you'll discover that Honda made a major technological breakthrough with their infotainment system, a volume knob. The old Pilot was equipped with a volume slider that was as obedient as a squirrel, but with this, I can dial in the precise amount of volume I want. Most of the Pilot's other enhancements are technical rather than physical. For example, this new Pilot gets the cabin control and the cabin talk features that debuted in the latest version of the Honda Odyssey minivan. Cabin control is an app-based system that lets rear seat passengers control things like the radio or the climate control via a smartphone. Luckily, the system lets the driver veto any of the back seat settings. Cabin Talk is intended to make talking to people in the second and third rows easier. It uses the Pilot's embedded microphone to boom the driver's voice through the audio speakers. And that feature should come in handy with this new Pilot because you can now get it with a 4G Wi-Fi system, and nobody can seem to ever remember the Wi-Fi password. Kevin, for the umpteenth time, the password is Dad's Pilot. There's nothing really to write home on the powertrain front. This is still the same 3.5-liter V6 with 280 horsepower, but Honda did revise its start-stop system to make it a little bit smoother and retune the 9-speed automatic transmission. And like the previous model, you can get this with a 6-speed auto or a 9-speed auto based on the trim level. But Honda did make some changes on the safety front. All Pilot models now come standard with the Honda Sensing Safety Suite, which includes things like adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist. And all models also get a blind spot information system. In last year's model, that was available only as an option on the top spec Elite trim. With all that out of the way, I think it's time for a drive. So here we are behind the wheel of the 2019 Honda Pilot. My initial impression is it feels remarkably the same as the model I drove 3 years ago. And that shouldn't come as a huge surprise since Honda really didn't change any of the hardware. It's also not a bad thing. That's because like the previous Pilot, this one is quite nice to drive. The suspension is nice and comfortable without feeling wallowy. The steering is light and direct. And this 3.5-liter V6 offers plenty of punch while still averaging up to 22 miles per gallon in mixed driving. The Pilot also flashes some athleticism around corners thanks to its torque vectoring all-wheel drive system. And this isn't some wannabe brake-based system. This is an honest-to-goodness torque vectoring system that can send more power to the outside rear wheel to improve handling. And that torque vectoring all-wheel drive system also helps the Pilot's off-road ability. The system is constantly detecting slippage in the wheels and sending the power to the wheels with the most grip. So even though this has fake skid plates, it actually can do some real off-roading. Even though the Pilot can do some off-roading, you're far more likely to see one off-loading in the carpool lane. And it's still brilliant at that thanks to these easy sliding second row seats. And it's got a spacious third row. And the CFN has a decent amount of cargo room considering its overall length. So there it is, the 2019 Honda Pilot. Automotive proof that the more things change, the more they stay the same. This new Pilot isn't radically different from the model that debuted 3 years ago, and yet it's still one of the best in the biz. So if you're looking for a good buy on a family SUV, the 2019 Pilot should be at the top of your shopping list. And if you're looking for a really good buy on a family SUV, you should really consider a used Pilot, because it's basically the same thing but without a volume knob. Just don't tell Honda I told you that.